Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our show today, which is the Resume Whisperer. We are going to talk about the do's and don'ts of interviews. We've had a number of shows so far, a number of episodes where we've been exploring what it's like to be in the job market, what it's like to write a resume. And we have our expert, the star of our show, the Resume Whisperer and corporate culturalist. Let's welcome Josef Stetter to the program. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me again. It's always exciting and fun.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the last episode. I'm learning so much from you. And the role that you do, the work that you do is so important because at some point in life, we find ourselves having to make a change, whether that's a job or it's a relationship or whatever it might be. I really feel that what you teach, what you instill in people can be applied to other scenarios as well.
Of course. I mean, it's transferable skills because no man is an island unto himself, as the expression goes in English. And there's a level where if you kind of don't understand social cues and you don't understand the questions and you're trying to answer them just for the sake of answering them, this is where you get lost. And this is where, as someone who's been in this realm for nearly 20 years, I've had a ton of really people do this in an interview and oh my God, what kind of offers were these that you're getting? So, this is where it's amazing to me that subtle nuances can make such a big difference in everything.
Absolutely. Excellent points, always. Josef, we have had a number of shows. I don't know if this is number 4 or 5, where we've talked about the interview process. And of course, having gone through interviews myself in the past, fortunately that's over. There's some things that stand out that I did that were really great and that things that were not so good. So can you share some stories with us about the do's and don'ts of interviews based on your experience?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with kind of, I'd say, the craziest story of extremely good. And then I'll share some crazy stories of extremely bad. And then we'll kind of take it from there in terms of insights and why or not. So when I was working, or one of my recruiting clients was a company that does a kind of custom surround sounds for houses in Canada that are worth about $2 million. So we're talking high end because in most of, let's say, Toronto area, houses are about $1 million. So we're talking $2-3 million and up, where, this is everything in the wall, completely wireless, connected to device. Clearly more common today, but going back 15-20 years ago, this wasn't so common. So my client, I interviewed this guy who was a financial controller for a company that makes blank CDs and DVDs. And for 5 years, the company he was working for told him that he cannot get a raise because the company's not making enough money. And sorry, just somebody came by here for a second. And, other than his he was getting paid about $65,000 a year as the controller of the company. and a possible $20,000 bonus at the end of the year for performance. Now, 5 years, they refused to give him a raise. I interviewed him. I sent him to this client that does custom surround sounds. Now, as part of my coaching, first thing I say when I teach people about interviewing is come into the interview with the confidence that you already have the job. Because when you've been promoted internally, Jacalyn, they don't come to you and say, Jacalyn, tell me about yourself. They say, Jacalyn, you're doing a great job. We'd like to give you a little bit more responsibility, maybe a little bit more money. Are you interested? So come in with that mindset that you already have the job. Focus on the results that you produce. Focus on the highlights that, this is how great I am. So I taught him that. I told him that. He went into the interview. Client called me after the interview and said, I love this guy. What is he making right now? I said, base of $65,000 with a possible bonus of $20,000 at the end of the year. He goes, okay, I'll offer him $85,000 base salary, $25,000 bonus to come work for me. Called the candidate, told him the great news. Candidate submitted his letter of resignation. 40 minutes after submitting his letter of resignation, his direct boss, the VP, came in and said, listen, you're the only one that understands what's going on here with all the numbers. I cannot let you quit. What did the other company offer you? So he told them 85 and 25. He's like, okay, give me a few minutes. The VP came back and said, we will give you a base of $120,000 and $30,000 bonus to stay here. Candidates call me back and it's like, oh my God, they just countered. What should I do? I've worked here for 10 years. I know everybody. I know all the systems. I said to him, but remember, for 5 years, they refused to give you a salary because they didn't have enough money. All of a sudden, they're doubling your salary. Do you think that's going to be more headaches to you or less headaches? He's like, yeah, but I know the routine. I called my client. I told him what happened. The client's like, okay, what'd they offer him? I said 120 and 30. He goes, listen, there's something really special about that guy. I was just so impressed with him. I'll offer him a base of $160,000, $40,000 to come work for me. Okay. Called the candidate, told him the news. Candidate submitted his resignation again. The entire leadership team of the company came back to his office, was like, we're not letting you go. You're way too important to this company. What did they offer you? Now remember, 5 years they refused to give him a raise. He told them what they offered. They discussed. They came back and said, we'll give you a base of $200,000 and 2% ownership in the company. In your worst year, you'll make $250,000. Candidate called me. He's like, they just offered me ridiculous. I'm like, oh, this is not what I wanted to hear. I called my client back. My client says, you know what? I understand how good this guy is. This is my final offer to him. I'm going to make this individual my right-hand man. I'm going to give him a base of $265,000 and 9% ownership in my company. In his worst year, he'll make $500,000. Right? And understand that negotiation, to me, was one of the most stressful negotiations of my life, took 4.5 hours. And this gentleman, because he did the right things in the interview, got a $430,000 raise.
What? Oh my God.
Yes, in 4.5 hours. Right? Because he went from a base salary of $65,000 to a base salary of $260,000. And then the 9% ownership in the company was an additional $250,000 in revenue, kind of guaranteed, in 4.5 hours.
That's incredible. I've never heard anything like that. Wow.
So that's probably the most extreme case of it, where I regularly get my clients 30,000 raise, 40,000 raise, perks and stuff like that. But again, if you present right and you have confidence and you kind of show that you can produce results and you can produce great results, companies will pay for you, right? On the flip side of it, I've had a few kind of moments where I went, no, this couldn't possibly happen in an interview. So I will use kind of 2-3 examples, and I'm going to go through. So one of my clients was one of the largest companies in the photocopier world in the world. Their HR manager was one of the most stiff, rigid, proper individuals I've ever met in my life. When I say stiff, rigid, proper, I'm talking like British proper, like button shirt up to their chin, perfect posture, zero sense of humor. Needed a senior account executive, base salary $150,000, $150,000 in possible commissions. Found them somebody that works for their direct competitor that already had books with Fortune 100 companies. Spent an hour and a half telling this guy, no matter what you do not, under any circumstances, crack jokes. Strictly professional. First question of the interview, she asked him, what motivates you in life? His answer verbatim, sex and money, in that order.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Needless to say, interview was done after one question. And then the HR person called me and yelled at me for 45 minutes for sending somebody so down for a $300,000 job. And there's nothing I can really say to that. Right?
So wait, when you got the phone call and then you spoke with I assume you spoke with the candidate again?
Of course. And I was just like, what would make you think that would be like first question of the interview? Like, even if your best friend is interviewing you, sex should never be the first thing out of your mouth unless you're applying to be an escort or a stripper, for example.
In a porn
or star, exactly. Right? Like, because your friend still has to take notes on you. Second of all, I was like, it's a $300,000 job. I made it extremely clear that you need to be by the book, focus on kind of your sales, focus on the results. What would make you think in your right mind that was funny?
Do you think it was self-sabotage?
It's possible. Again, it's not something that I dwelled in that long because it was just like, okay, clearly you were a waste of time.
Right.
And I'm never going to work with you again because, if I spent an hour and a half saying, say this, and you're not coachable. You're not really ready and willing to listen. Right. But again, these are things where sometimes you kind of wonder. And so I have 2 more examples of even worse than that one. So the second example is a very famous credit cards. They might have had the slogans hands in your pocket earlier in their kind of model. And this was kind of going around this time of year, November, where they needed a graphic designer. Now, because it's towards the end of the year, they decided to hire somebody as a temp, so it's not officially on their books. I found them someone who was stunningly beautiful, extremely bubbly personality, and phenomenal graphic designer. She gets hired, she starts a job, 2-3 weeks on the job. Senior VP walks over to her, goes, listen, I know you're only a temp. I know you've only been here for about 3 weeks, but everyone in the company absolutely loves you. I want you to feel like you're part of the family and you're part of the company. So I personally want to invite you to the Christmas party. She showed up to the Christmas party in an outfit that left nothing to the imagination. And when I say nothing, I mean see-through scarf. Proceeded to get completely drunk within 20 minutes of arrival. And if that wasn't enough, walked over to the senior VP that invited her to the Christmas party, and in front of his wife, stuck her tongue down his throat.
Oh my God.
And when he reacted and kind of threw her off, she turned around, grabbed the first woman she saw, and stuck her tongue down her throat. Now, if you've ever heard the expression, shit rolls down, you can imagine the night this senior VP had trying to explain to his wife why this gorgeous, practically naked woman is making out with him in front of the entire company and kind of letting her know that it's not an affair. So when I got the call the following morning, I was yelled at for 4.5 hours. Right. And, as much as I'm empathetic and, it's a huge client and I'm trying to save the client, in the back of my head, I'm going, how sexually promiscuous are you? Is not one of my interview questions. Nor is it one of my reference check questions kind of thing. Right. And this happened at the Christmas party. So technically it wasn't the performance at work. It's an extension of work, but it wasn't directly at work. And those are things that I can't control. But yes, that did happen. Right. After a lot of begging and a lot of like, okay, we'll give this to you for free. We'll give this to you for free. We'll give this to you for free. We saved the client. But again, to the level of, you're going to go to a holiday event. Please make sure you know what your limitations are in terms of alcohol consumption. Please make sure that you are cautious about, putting on a show that no one will ever forget. I'll put that mildly, because yes, and especially nowadays, companies do check your social media, and they will check if you have anything controversial that could potentially hurt their reputation or their brand before hiring you. Right.
That's amazing. That is absolutely dumbfounded on that. So as a result of that, and by the way, congratulations, you were able to keep the client. That's excellent. So as a result of that, because I thought about what you just said, how would you know that that person has that type of that personality trait? Or so do you now check people's social media to see if there's anything that might be a red flag?
Again, there is AI apps that offer or do check. There is criminal background checks that kind of companies that exist that will check their full kind of dig into the social media history to make sure to minimize surprises kind of thing, right? At the end of the day, I can't really do anything as a recruiter, as a career coach in this, something of this. It's something that, this is where, again, starting this show, I said, be aware of what you're posting, because a lot of times people start supporting causes. They don't even know what the cause is, or they don't know. And, to them, it's funny that they're posted this picture on social media and so forth. But, unless you're a celebrity, unless you're there, and even celebrities, I mean, look at what happened with Kanye West. He chose to say some very racist and anti-Semitic views, and all his contracts got canceled in terms of you don't go there. You it's one thing to be considered a creative and have do things that you trust in yourself and you trust in your abilities. And again, he's a very talented man, but he chose to kind of upset more than he can handle kind of thing, and to take on more than he can handle. And the repercussion was that, everybody kind of went, I don't want association with this because it ruins our reputation. So it does happen now with celebrities too. And unfortunately, our world's gone a little bit crazy where people are starting to post things that can be very controversial. But like I said, these first two stories were just the kind of icing. Now I'm about to tell you a real doozy of please don't do this in an interview, because again, the good stuff, like when I hear candidates followed my system, 7 rules to a wow interview, and got 4 job offers in 2 weeks, it's amazing. And I love being there to support them and helping them weigh the pros and cons of each offer, based on commute, based on the package as a whole, not just the salary but the benefits, the perks, the incentives on the back end, the company itself, the reputation or the culture of the company. There's a lot of potential variables to making sure that it's good and bad. Obviously, if you've been looking for a job for 6 months to a year, first of all, you need to get a hold of me because you're doing it wrong. And second of all, if you are kind of doing things correctly, then you'll get great opportunities and they'll come to you. So you won't be unemployed for a very long time because companies will recognize the value that you bring. So this is where I will kind of say this is probably one of the most extreme. Please don't ever do this in an interview. So, and again, I apologize if I offend anybody, but I'm describing the story as it actually happened. So again, in recruiting, I found this resume of a woman that's been working in accounting public accounting for over 35 years. When I called her to the office, generally speaking, recruiters have a form that they need to sign that says that they give the recruiters permission to send the resume to existing customers as well as potential customers because they might have a great skill set to offer. So when this woman came in, and again, I apologize for offending, but probably one of the ugliest women I've ever seen in my life. Like moles all over her face, unibrow, crooked teeth, craters of acne that never healed. And on top of that, she was very, very bitter and very, very angry. And she made a huge stink about not wanting to sign the form. And at that time, the company that I worked for, there was about 12 plus of us. Everybody ran out and stopped what they were doing to see who was this woman that was screaming and yelling at the top of her lungs. I calmed her down. I got her to sign the paperwork. I interviewed her. I sent her to one of my best clients. She interviewed on Thursday night at 6 p.m., right? Ended up being a 2.5 hour long interview with one of the partners there. And while interviewing her, the partner realized that this woman pretty much wrote the book on quality control for accountants without actually being a partner. So instead of an $85,000 job a year, the partner was talking to her about a job that was paying $130,000 a year, plus profit sharing, plus bonuses, parking spot, gym membership, laptop, cell phone, and a bunch of other perks. Okay. So again, this interview happened from 6 p.m. to about 8:30 p.m. 9:30 a.m. the following day, I get a call from the partner saying she was just let go from her firm. I want to know why. They wouldn't tell me. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm friends with some of the partners there. She was just let go. I'm like, okay. So I want to know why. So I called the candidate back. I'm like, how'd the interview go? She goes, oh, it started a little bit slow. Then we started talking about like quality control and I got really excited. And I'm like, okay, so what's your interest rate? She's like 10. I'm like, oh, great. I'm like, are you still currently employed at your current employer? She's like, yep. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, the partner that interviewed you is very well connected. And he heard that you were no longer there. She's like, no, I'm there. I'm like, okay, let me rephrase. The partner is friends with partners at the firm that you're currently at, right? He knows that you were let go. What's going on? She looked at me and goes, how does he know? I go, what's going on? Now, this should have been my first red flag that something is about, like shit's about to hit the fan. Because she goes, oh, it was downsizing, restructuring. They even gave me $1,000 to go see a lawyer and insisted on it. Now, all I could hear was downsizing, restructuring. You're being interviewed for a $130,000 position. My fee on it is 15 to 20%. That's a pretty sweet commission. So I called my client, told him it was downsizing, restructuring. And he goes, okay, let's set up a second interview with the other partners in the firm for Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. She showed up to the interview at Tuesday at 10 a.m. drunk out of her mind. Now, when I say drunk out of her mind, her eyes were bloodshot red. Her speech was slurred. She was falling out of the chair in an executive boardroom with a table that can hold about 20 people, like one of those big tables. The partners could smell the alcohol from across the table. They called me after the interview was done and said, listen, we need you to find out if something happened to her. We will pay for rehab. That is how good this woman is. I'm like, not the reaction I expected, but I'll take it. So I start reference checking her. And obviously the first place I call is her last employer. I get the HR manager. I'm like, hi, I'm calling for a reference. As soon as I said the name, he's like, we'll never hire again. And he hung up the phone on me. I'm like, uh-oh. So you have to understand, even as a recruiter, is there a problem with alcohol? is a sensitive topic because it could be discrimination, it could be this. So I'm trying to call the other companies or the other references to kind of get an idea if maybe there was an issue at the Christmas party or social events that, potentially affected the work. Now, she finds out that I'm asking about the alcohol. Now, as I said, I was in a bullpen with 12 or 13 other reps. And I'm on another call, and there's a call waiting. And I finally kind of get the call waiting and go, "Hi, this is Joseph. How can I help you?" And she screams at the top of her lung, "So you think I'm a drunk, don't you?" And it is so loud that I literally put the phone away from my ears because I didn't want my eardrums to burst. At which point, all my coworkers went, "Huh? What's going on?" And they all stopped what they were doing. And I was like, "Calm down. There was concern that in your last interview on Tuesday, they smelled some alcohol, but they're still very interested in you." And as soon as I said that, she was calmed down. Now, at this point, all my coworkers heard alcohol and interested. So they all rolled their chair and they're kind of listening like this. So I'm trying to tippy-toe around this subject. And I'm like, okay, listen, the company that interviewed you is extremely interested in you. There was concern that they smelled a little bit of alcohol. Did anything happen recently, like somebody passed away, that affected you? Nope. Okay. Did your pet die? Nope. Okay. Was there a major trauma? Nope. And sometimes when you're speaking to somebody and you get the sense that they're lying to you, but you can't quite figure out why, I had that right away. And so I'm trying to probe. And I'm like, okay, again, you've had a 35-year career. So we're not talking, 20-year-old that's partied kind of thing. We're talking about a mature woman that's in her late 60s, close to 70, in terms of work experience and knowledge. So I'm asking her, so why would you have a drink before coming to the interview? You've obviously had a 35-year career. You know what you're talking about. And she's like, kind of giving me the round around. It's like this, it's like that. And I'm like, okay, something doesn't add up. And then all of a sudden she blurts out, "Well, it was the partner's fault that I drank at the last company." I'm like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. I'm like, okay, was there harassment? No. Was there abuse? No. I'm like, so what do you mean it was the partner's fault? And she says, "Well, they're the ones that brought the liquor into the office." And again, I'm back of my hands, but also politically correct, saying you've had a 35-year career. Just because somebody brought alcohol to the office doesn't mean it needs to be drunk. And, even in our office at the time, every 2 weeks, we would shut down the office an hour early. And between the 12 of us share, let's say, a couple of bottles of wine so that everybody took like a cup and a half. I said, after 35 years, you should know what your alcohol tolerance is. You've been in public accounting for 35 years, so you know the taxes and the stressors and all that. So it's nothing new. And I'm probing because I'm certain there's something more there. And all of a sudden she blurts out, "Well, the alcohol is not the problem. The problem is that men find me attractive." At which point my entire team that consisted of women as well burst out and fell out of their chair laughing hysterically. Thank God that, much younger and cat-like reflexes, I'm like, mute. And everybody kind of calmed down, and I'm kind of regaining my composure, and I go, "What do you mean men find you attractive?" To which she proceeded to tell me that in the last 5 jobs she's had affairs with the senior partners. And I'm like, listen, this is a public accounting firm. I can't go to my client and say, "Listen, don't worry about the alcohol, just don't work late." So I tell my client that we can't move forward. There's bigger problems. Now I know I need this kind of quality control manager. And 2 months go by, and I find, by coincidence, I was actually looking for something else, a resume that's perfect. I call the guy up, and I'm like throwing everything at him, like salary, bonuses, profit sharing, everything I could possibly to sweeten the deal to kind of get him to say yes. After about 45 minutes, he looks at me, goes, "Where were you a week ago? they just offered me to be partner in this firm. Otherwise, I would take your deal right away. I'm like, okay, listen, I've just spent an hour talking to you. By any chance, is there anyone you know that can do this job that is not a partner? He pauses for a sec and goes, there's one woman. I can't remember her name, but she wrote the book on quality control for accounting. I took a deep breath, and then, like, as I was about to say something, goes, but I remember there were some problems with her. I shook my head, went, by any chance, might her first name be Priscilla? And he says, yes, that's the one. I'm like, it's okay. I've already gone down that path. So that would, I'd say, probably one of the biggest doozies of my career.
That sounds like it could be a reality TV show.
It could be. But yes, 35-year career down the drain. And what I found out later was because she was drinking so much during work hours that if someone said to her, you look nice, she interpreted that as they're having an affair or they're flirting with her, which is why earlier to the story, when they downsized her from her current employer and gave her $1,000 to go see a lawyer and insisted on it, no company that downsizes says, please go check with the lawyer, because they knew they had an ironclad case, right? Because they ended up being my client. So I kind of got the inside story later, but I was just like, OMG, right?
You have seen and heard quite a bit. That they were doozies for sure.
Yeah. So, so there's you hear and you see funny skits of people that pretend like they know a second language and like, oh yeah, I speak this or I speak that, and they only speak 2 words. Like, yeah, that's common because people are so desperate for the job. And I definitely have stories of that, but there's a level where, again, we become a society where common sense seems to be so far removed from common sense. And to me, like, I understand that if you're, let's say, new to North America, United States or Canada, you might not know some of the behavioral nuances, or you might not know some of the differences. So I mentioned, I think, last episode that generally speaking, let's say men from India, Sri Lanka, sometimes Pakistan, even Nepal, it is very common, especially in India, that they wear multiple rings. So one ring is for health, one ring is protection, one ring is status, one ring is wealth, and so forth. And so if they come to an interview wearing like 8 rings on one finger or on both hands, in Western society, it's kind of like, okay, that's a little bit much. And again, depending on the role, if you're kind of doing something more creative like graphic design, by all means, express yourself. But for an accounting job, not so much. And so there's a level where I teach them to kind of go, look, I'm not saying go against your culture. So wear, let's say, 2 rings and then put the rest of them in your pocket, because they're still on you, but you're not kind of surprising the interviewer to the level where they don't know how to respond, or they're focusing strictly on the ring rather than what you're saying. So yes, there's cultural differences, and I can respect that, and I've had experiences with that. But showing up drunk to an interview, showing up naked, saying sex as something there, and I've had simple stuff where I had, let's say, a graphic designer that showed up to an interview, forgot to bring her portfolio. First question in the interview asked her, tell me about your last job. Very simple, easy question. The candidate answered, yeah, I'm not sure why I got paid. I don't think my work was that good, because she wanted to be honest. I'm like, there's honesty and there's stupidity, right? Because saying I don't think my work is good enough to get paid is pretty much guaranteeing that nobody will want to hire you, even if you've built good rapport.
It's interesting that you said that. I know someone who went for a job interview, and the question was, tell me about the last job that you had. Yeah, I don't know why they paid me because I really didn't do anything. They didn't get
Yep.
the job, obvious.
Right. And then people wonder why it's so hard for them. Like, I mentioned that people focus on the wrong things. Like, yes, it's very important to build rapport and acknowledge, let's say, a picture of the family, or acknowledge the art in the office or the decor, but don't spend 45 minutes talking about music if it has nothing to do with the show. It's like me saying, I'm a resume whisperer. Jacalyn, why don't we talk about, working out every day kind of thing. It doesn't really, like, I mean, we can talk about it because I know that you love working out and you're very committed and you've done 700 straight workouts and so forth,
On the
right?
15th.
Right.
Yes.
And congratulations for that. You
Thank you.
deserve that. But again, as a resume whisperer, unless the show is focused on health, right, the content needs to be relevant, right? So as part of me kind of going, look, interviews, there are rules and there's a science to it. Yes, you can deviate a little bit from the rules. You can add a little bit. You need to also know, like, obviously, old school, if your interviewer is leaning forward, you want to lean forward. If they're leaning back, you want to lean back. If they say something about the company, you want to reiterate that that's interesting, that's exciting, that's great, because yes, they still have to go through the routine, but they're also gauging your physiology to see that you respond. I remember when I built my call center in Vancouver that generated $2.5 million in under 6 months, and with the expectation of generating 300,000 for the year. I interviewed someone and I was like, can you give me an example of how you demonstrate teamwork? And she was like, well, I was working as a recruiter and there was this split that had to be done. And I gave it to my coworker and I didn't take any money and I was a really good team player and you should hire me. And I'm looking at her face and I'm like, I see the amount of anger that she didn't get the commission. And I'm like, you're the type of person that would backstab everybody in this team for you to get ahead, for you to kind of get the recognition. I was like, okay, I love asking kind of sometimes questions that make people think, like, if you had an opportunity to make a movie about any experience from your life, what would the movie be about? Who would you choose to star in it? And what would the title be? Now, there's a reason, there's psychology why I asked this question. When I asked this candidate this question, her answer was, well, obviously the movie would be about me. I'm like, yes, my question asked you what would be in your life, like an experience from your life. And then she's like, well, who would star it? Me, because I need to be the star. And what would the title be? Me, myself, and I. And I was like, you're a team player, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Me, I lost commission, but I'm a team player. I'm happy about it. I'm happy. So you kind of have to, sometimes I ask questions where I don't care what the answer is. I look at their reaction to the question. I look at their body language. I look at their physiology. And it's interesting to me that even simple questions, like, people are so programmed to answer, tell me about this job. But when I change the question, like, what are your biggest achievements in your last job? They don't know how to answer the question because they've never thought about achievements. They're just going to go, I love my job. I'm really hard worker. I'm really good. Good for you, but that's not my question. My question was, what was your achievement? So if your answer is, I love my job, I'm a team player, you didn't impress me. And this is where, common sense is becoming less and less common in the world of interviewing and in the world of job finding as a whole.
And also, to your point, we've discussed this on another episode, it's also about listening. You ask a question, but people are not listening to what it is you asked.
Correct. And this is where, obviously you have the listening program, Dr. Jacalyn, which is a great program, and I highly recommend people to do it. But again, we're so focused on giving the answer that it's kind of, like sometimes when you walk by people that and you're like, hi, I'm doing well. You didn't even ask them yet. They've already answered the how they're doing kind of thing, right? Because it's just, we've been programmed for it.
I love when someone says, "Hey, how are you doing?" And you start to answer and they already walked away. It's like, wait, I thought you wanted to know how I was doing because you
Yeah,
really didn't want to
exactly. It's
know.
we've been so programmed to kind of autoresponder to it, and again, because we've been programmed as a society where when someone asks you how you're doing, uh, it's rare that you would say, and forgive me, Jacalyn, I'm going to use a few examples from you because they're recent, but like, your mom passed away. And so if you're saying, like, I'm not great because my mom passed away, you know, hopefully there's space to hold that. I can listen to him like, oh, that's great. Yeah. No, I mean, my father passed away 11 years ago. When I was going through dealing with his passing, I wasn't great. I wasn't happy. I wasn't okay. I was sad. And when people don't listen to that, it kind of belittles or dismisses the experience that you're having. And, you know, again, we've become a society where everybody can identify as whatever they want. Everybody can, be trans anything. There's people that are perfectly healthy that identify as disabled, so they purposely harm themselves to be disabled. There's people that, and it's like, okay, like, you want to identify and you want to do that, do you? But now you're forcing me not to have a conversation, because if you're saying something to me that is new to me or different to me, and you're not giving me a chance to process, but you're getting upset that I'm going, huh? Because I should be aware that, there's humans now that identify as cats. Sadly, as a side note, the number one plastic surgery in North America right now is Snapchat, because apparently humans now want to have dog ears and cat ears and a really big tongue or whatever Snapchat filters there are. Again, they're fun, they're creative. Like, my 3.5-year-old daughter loves to look at the pictures and go like this and look at the faces and so forth. But to physically transform your body to that filter is a level of extreme. And again, I'm not here to speak, if you're not happy with your body and you want something changed, that's why plastic surgery exists. Do what makes you feel good. Do what gives you confidence and boosts you. But if you're doing something that's uncommon and then you get upset at me because I react to it, or because it surprises me, or because I don't know how to process it yet, this is where common sense is lost. Like, you have to understand that I'm not used to humans telling me they're a cat. I didn't grow up with that. So if now you identify as a cat and I need to talk to you and behave to you like a cat, you need to understand that I also need a little bit of time to understand, if you're human, how do I adapt or adjust the conversation to talk to a cat now, for example. And again, everybody has the right to be who they are. Everybody has the right to believe in what they believe in. But just understand that you can't go from I believe it to now everybody has to understand it if it's non-common practice. And we're seeing this in interviews where, again, culturally, you might be more aggressive or you might be louder, but you can't expect everyone around you to automatically know that that's the way you communicate. You need to take ownership and say, listen, I come from a culture that we tend to be loud or excited. So if I'm a little bit too loud, I apologize. It's just more, I'm trying to show you that, let's say, I'm very, very interested in this role or this opportunity, rather than how dare you not understand me. And I think that's where there's a fine line.
Excellent points. By the way, I've never heard of this before. What is it called? Getting your ears?
So there's a app called Snapchat, which basically allows, there's different filters. So there's filters where you can have stars, you can have, Halloween costumes. You can look at how you look like older, for example, and kind of there. So one of the most common filters is to have like big dog ears coming out, and like if you stick out your tongue, it kind of cartoon-like animates
Okay.
the tongue or whatever, right? But the mindset, like, so one of the Snapchat filters is a filter where you kind of have the look,
Fish? Fish
fish
look?
look, and
Fish.
apparently that is a very popular plastic surgery for it,
Mm.
right? And again, if it makes you feel better, please by all means, I support you identifying or you having that. But you also have to understand that if you choose to look like a fish and it's done through surgeries where there's significant variations to your appearance, the first time I meet you, maybe even the second time, I might still be taken aback because I don't know it. I don't. And there, there was a woman on Britain's Got Talent that auditioned and identified herself as a doll. So she dressed up as a doll. Her hands were like this, and she moved literally like 3 degrees this way and 3 degrees that way, and was very upset that the judges did not know how to react because her lips just moved a little bit because she was a doll.
Was that part of her act?
It was her audition, but she got angry that they tried to address her as the audition rather than as the doll that auditioned. And it was like, but again, you've come on a very public stage to sing a song. So the judges are there to critique what they heard and what they saw in terms of whether or not they related to the emotions, they related to the singing ability as a whole. If you're angry that they're not judging how well the doll sang, right? Again, they were all very shocked. I'm like, okay, you're a doll, and they didn't really know what to say. How do you judge that kind of thing? And so this is where I said, like, if she is happy being a doll and dressing up like a doll and acting like a doll, more power to you. But if you expect that this is something new and the first time I saw the video, so I have time to kind of process that. But even if I met you in person, I've never met anybody that identifies as a doll. So I have a few questions that I would like to understand for the sake of conversation. But if you're getting angry at me for asking you a few questions, then how can you be upset at me for not identifying you properly, for example? And so the same thing in an interview, a lot of people get upset that they didn't get the job. But if you didn't present the information correctly, you didn't highlight, this is the results I bring, this is why I'm worth it, this is why your company will make money, save money, or increase efficiency, right? It's not. Unless you are a very skilled brain surgeon, for example, most jobs, especially in the corporate world, especially white-collar jobs, the decision is based more on personality and cultural fit rather than technical skills. It's very rarely you have the perfect. Now, again, you might be in a field that is so specialized that all they care about is your technical skills. I use the example of brain surgeon because, yes, surgeons tend to be arrogant. Brain surgeons a little bit more, but they've earned the right. They've earned the right to say, I am so smart, I'm so good because I'm a brain surgeon. And so I don't get upset if they kind of go blah, 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 because this is the way that they are and the level they've earned the respect and esteem of being brilliant at what they do. Right. But as a recruiter, I often tell candidates, if you have 60%, 60 of what's on a job description, you might be a great candidate, because sometimes it's a technical skill that if the company really loves you, they'll pay for the training. Sometimes you might not have the right education, but you have a ton of experience, and experience will always trump education, right? And as we're changing, there might be variances where you've never done this or you've never done that. But again, if it's something related, you'll figure it out because it's part of the job. But again, I've also had clients that, let's say, for example, I had an IT client that gave me requirements where a software developer would have 25 skill sets, and I found them somebody with 22. And they're like, no, we want all 25. I'm like, 4 of these softwares that you've listed only came to market in the last 3 months. So the odds that you're going to find somebody with all 25 is very, very small. It's extremely needle in a haystack, because some of what you've listed, most people don't even know yet because it's so new to the market, right? But they were adamant that they want a full matching. And I was like, all right, I'll keep searching, but it's going to be a very long and hard search, because if one skill's missing, you're basically dismissing the candidates. Ironically enough, especially in software development, there are so many tools that overlap or technologies that overlap, so it's hard to keep up with the acronyms now, because there's so many new ones every few months that do the exact same thing. And so that's where, again, there's a fine line interviewing. Like, obviously, you have to understand, I'm wrapping up there, is that the interview is there to gauge that you'll fit into the company and that you'll produce results for them.
Thank you so much. I really love the stories that you shared today. And we've got your website available for people to take a look at. So it's your name, JosefStetter.com. What would you like people to focus on here on this site?
Again, the site is just kind of my background and what makes me an expert, and the fact that I've spent not only the 30,000 hours to master it, but I've switched careers. I've worked in recruiting. I still work in recruiting, and I've helped over 11,000 people, to give you the insights. That's not just, oh yeah, I did one course in university on HR, and now I'm a career counselor that's following kind of the generic formula that everybody's been using for the past 40 years. So this is just kind of a background on who I am and what I've done. And it also connects you, if you want to take advantage of my knowledge, to connect with me directly, or do my courses and kind of expedite and make your experience of job finding that much faster and that much easier.
Outstanding. Joseph, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise and your knowledge with us. I greatly appreciate it. And this show will be airing again on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And that, of course, is the regular time slot for the Resume Whisperer. So, Joseph, last words for anybody today before we close out.
Again, there is a perfect job for you, or your dream job, right? You need to tweak your resume to highlight how great you are, and you need to bring confidence and results to your interview so that companies want to hire you.
Excellent. Please do reach out to Joseph. He's here providing information. He wants to work with you. He wants to help you. You just have to take the step to go ahead and connect with him. You can also find him on social media, especially LinkedIn. All right, we're closing out, and our next show is the Perfect Podcast Show with Keith Saltoyanis. So stay tuned for that, and look for Joseph again on Thursday. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Joseph.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.